Chapter 1. The Reluctant King. The throne room was silent. Tall windows stretched like solemn guardians along the marble walls, filtering weak morning light across the red carpet that split the room in half. At the end of it, on the cold stone dais, the throne waited, dark, carved, unwelcoming. So did the man seated in it. King Theron of Volante was not a man who sought attention, nor did he wear the crown with ease. His black hair, tousled as if run through with restless hands, framed a sharp, handsome face, carved with restraint. His storm-grey eyes flicked toward the gilded doors as they creaked open. She was here, Elyra of Danis, the peace bride, the offering from a neighbouring kingdom, in hopes of quelling a rising tension neither court could name aloud. Her steps were quiet but steady as she approached, the hem of her cream-coloured gown brushing the floor. Her golden blonde hair had been plaited into soft coils, though a strand had come loose at her temple, and the wind from the courtyard carried a whisper of lavender from her skin. She was beautiful, radiantly so, but in a way that unsettled Theron, because she did not look awed, nor angry, nor afraid. She looked calm. Elyra curtsied deeply, head bowed. "My king," she said, her voice like soft parchment, measured, respectful, not simpering. Theron rose slowly. His broad shoulders straightened, and the simple black of his robes made him look more like a judge than a groom. "You may rise," he said. His voice was deep, even, but something about her presence scraped against the walls he'd built inside. When she looked up, her gaze met his directly. There was no challenge in her eyes, only quiet strength. "This was not your choice," he said. She tilted her head. "Nor yours." A beat passed. The stillness was not uncomfortable, but it was sharp, like waiting for the first drop of rain to fall in a dry field. At last, he gestured to the steward. "Let the ceremony proceed." The binding was simple, no fanfare, no music. He took her hand, slender, cool, smaller than he expected, and repeated the vow that had been written for him. She did the same. Rings were exchanged, not gold, but silver, etched with vines. And that was it. Husband and wife, strangers. The court clapped, some too loudly. A few noblewomen murmured behind their fans, already judging her posture, her hair, her lack of diamonds. Elyra did not flinch. That night he did not visit her chamber. Instead, Theron stood by his window and looked out over the quiet, frost-laced hills of his kingdom. His hands were clasped behind his back, and his brow furrowed as if reading a text only he could see. He had expected resentment from her, or tears, or at the very least, fear. But Elyra had offered none of those things, and that unnerved him more than he cared to admit. In the room down the hall, Elyra sat at the edge of her bed, brushing out her hair slowly. She had said no to servants, no to wine. She wanted only peace tonight. Peace and the sound of her own breath in the dark. She did not cry. She did not mourn the life she left behind. Because there was something about the king's eyes, hard as they were, that told her he was not the villain her people had warned her of. But he was a man who had been left alone for too long. And she wondered quietly what it would mean to be the one person he might one day let in. Chapter 2. The Arrival at the Palace. The carriage wheels clattered over cobblestone as Elyra leaned forward, pulling the velvet curtain aside to glimpse the Palace of Volante for the first time. It rose like a monolith against the grey sky, tall and severe, its towers wrapped in ivy and shadow. The banners bore a silver wolf, stoic, fierce, alone. She took a slow breath. When the carriage door opened, her boots touched foreign soil. A sharp wind tugged at her skirts, and the guards said nothing as they led her up the long staircase. No welcoming fanfare, no warm greeting, only silence and frost. Inside, the halls were grand but austere. Dark stone, deep tapestries, iron sconces lit with low fire. Servants bowed but didn't speak. Her escort peeled away without explanation, leaving her before the Queen's chamber door. She opened it alone. The room was large, cold, beautiful in its severity. A fire crackled weakly in the hearth. Beside the bed lay a folded note in a masculine hand. "You may request what you wish. Tea." That was all. Elyra folded the note without a sound and set it aside. She did not wish for silks or jewels. What she wished for could not be granted by decree. Later, she walked the halls by herself. Nobles watched her like a curiosity. Some bowed stiffly, others whispered. She did not shrink. In the west wing, she found a neglected greenhouse, its glass roof fogged with dew, the plants inside overgrown but clinging to life. She slipped inside and breathed in the scent of soil and green things. It reminded her of home. She touched a withered vine gently, as if offering comfort. "Would you like the gardeners summoned?" a voice asked. She turned. Theron stood there, arms folded, his dark tunic sharp against the green light. "No," she said calmly. "Let it be." He studied her. "You are not what I expected." She smiled faintly. "Nor are you." A pause passed between them. One neither broke. At last he said, "Dinner is at the 7th bell. You may sit beside me." "May I?" she asked, tilting her head. Something flickered in his eyes, amusement maybe, or approval. "Yes," he said, and then he left. And though he hadn't touched her, Elyra stood there a long while after, her fingertips still warm. Chapter 3. Quiet Observations. The next morning, Elyra rose before the sun. She wandered the garden paths in a grey wool cloak, dew soaking the hem of her skirts. The cold bit at her cheeks, but she welcomed it. It grounded her. Above her, the sky was just beginning to warm with the first hint of rose. Unseen by her, Theron watched from a balcony overhead. One hand rested on the stone rail, the other on his hip. He wasn't sure why he watched, only that she was not behaving as expected. No demands, no complaints, no flinching. She seemed to be making space for herself, gently, but without apology. Later that day, they dined together, for the first time, truly together. She ate without fear, without glancing over her shoulder. When he offered her wine, she declined with a smile, then asked about the falcon crest carved above the hearth. "It was my mother's," he said after a pause. "She loved falcons, thought they were more loyal than most men." Elyra smiled. A wise woman. He didn't answer, but the corner of his mouth twitched. Days passed. They did not become friends. Not yet. But they learned each other's silences. She learned that when his brow creased while he wrote, he was working through grief. He learned that when she tucked her hair behind her ear twice in quick succession, it meant she was nervous. It was nothing and everything. And neither of them said it aloud, but it mattered. Chapter 4. A thread between them. A week passed. The palace remained cold, but something between them had begun to thaw. One evening, as sleet pattered softly against the windows, Elyra stood in the library with a book half forgotten in her hands. She wasn't reading. Theron entered silently, dressed not in his ceremonial blacks, but in a soft, deep green robe lined in fur. He paused when he saw her. "You favor this room," he said. "It's quiet," she replied, then added after a beat, "but not empty." He crossed to the hearth and stirred the fire with the poker, the flames casting amber light across his face. "May I sit?" he asked. She nodded. For a while neither spoke. She returned her eyes to the book, though her fingers had gone still on the page. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Do you regret it?" She turned to him, eyes soft but alert. "The marriage?" He nodded once. Elyra closed the book. "Number. But I do regret the pain that made it necessary." Theron looked down at his hands. "You see more than most." "Because I look," she said simply. He met her eyes. For the first time, truly. And for the first time, something inside him stirred. Later, when she stood to leave, she faltered at the door. "Theron," she said softly. He raised his head. "Thank you for asking." And she left him in the quiet firelight, staring at the place where she had stood. Chapter 5. The Fevered Night. The snow fell heavier that week. Servants moved through the palace with hushed tones, and the hearths were stoked higher each night. Elyra spent more time indoors, though she continued her quiet walks in the greenhouse each morning. She liked the feeling of damp earth, the fragile life that refused to die. Theron did not stop her. In truth, he often found himself adjusting his route through the halls to cross paths with her, never speaking, only watching, until the night she fell ill. It began with a chill in her hands. Then came the coughing. By sundown, her skin burned with fever. The physicians came, but Theron was not satisfied. He stayed beside her bed, arms crossed, jaw clenched. "She's burning," he growled. "She needs rest and time," one physician assured. "There is no poison, only winter's bite." When they left, he remained. Elyra stirred fitfully in the sheets. Her cheeks were flushed, lashes damp against her skin. When her lips parted, a whisper escaped. "Theron." His name. He sat down beside her, heart thudding hard. Slowly he reached out and took her hand. It was smaller than he remembered, too warm. "I'm here," he murmured. She shivered. He stripped off his outer tunic and climbed onto the bed, settling beside her as gently as if she were glass. He pulled her close, sharing his warmth, wrapping the thick fur blanket around them both. "Don't you dare leave," he whispered, forehead resting against hers. In the dim firelight, her breathing began to steady, one small hand curled against his chest. He didn't sleep. Not that night. And when dawn came, her fever broke. She woke to the feel of his arm around her and the sound of his quiet breath. And she did not move away. Chapter 6. Breath between them. The following days moved differently. Something delicate had shifted, as though the moment in the fevered night had turned an invisible key between them. Theron no longer avoided her presence in the halls. He no longer sent messages through servants. And Elyra no longer hesitated to speak first. They began to take meals together, alone. At first it was silent. Then came short exchanges. Then came laughter. Elyra was laughing, truly laughing, over a dry remark he'd made about a nobleman's hat feather, and Theron found himself watching her mouth rather than finishing his bread. "You should smile more," she teased, her tone gentle, not coy. Theron looked at her. "I don't remember how." She tilted her head. "That's all right. I'll remind you." He couldn't look away. That night, He found himself standing outside her door. He didn't knock, but she opened it anyway. She wore a robe the colour of snow with her hair unbraided, cascading over one shoulder like light poured from the moon. Her bare feet made no sound on the stone. "I was about to sleep," she said softly. His voice was low. "Forgive me." She smiled faintly. "Number I. I'm glad you came." He stepped inside. She didn't retreat. The room was warm, quiet. A single candle flickered on the nightstand, casting soft golden light over her face. She looked up at him and didn't look away. "I thought I'd lost you," he admitted. "You didn't," she whispered. A beat of silence. His hand rose hesitantly, then stopped. She reached for it, guiding it to her cheek. Her skin was warm, healthy now, her eyes soft. "Theron," she murmured. He didn't kiss her, but his forehead touched hers, and his breath stilled as if the world were holding itself in place just for this moment. "Sleep," he said gently. She nodded. He stepped back, but their hands lingered, a brush of fingers. Then he left. Neither of them slept for a long time, and both dreamed of the other's voice saying their name. Chapter 7. The Garden Door. The snow had stopped. Though the skies remained pale and cloud-laced, a shy warmth had returned to the earth, enough to stir the bulbs sleeping beneath the soil. Elyra stood at the edge of the greenhouse, brushing her fingertips across the fogged glass. Inside, the plants had begun to stretch again, crocuses, hellebore, pale green buds clinging to thorned stems. She was not alone. Theron stood a pace behind her, his breath faintly clouding the air between them. He did not speak, not yet, but something in the way he looked at her, softened, intent, told her he had not come merely to observe the flowers. "It's healing," she said, still gazing into the greenery. "Yes." She turned to him. "So are we." His mouth parted slightly as if to speak, but her words had robbed him of it. He approached slowly, and this time when his hand found hers, he did not hesitate. They stood there for some time, palms pressed, fingers curling. Her cheeks were pink, not from the cold. His jaw was tight, not with anger, but restraint. "I want you to know," he said at last, voice low and rough. "I never meant to be cold. I only didn't know how to be anything else." She looked up at him, her voice a murmur. "I know. And yet, you stayed." She smiled gently. "I think I was waiting for you to come in from the storm." His chest rose sharply with breath. Without warning, the sky broke above them, and sunlight streamed through the misted glass. The beams caught her hair, turning it to gold. Theron reached out and brushed her cheek with his knuckles. She leaned into it. "Come," she said quietly. "There's something I want to show you." She led him around the greenhouse to a small side door nearly hidden by ivy. She unlatched it and stepped through. Beyond was a private walled garden, forgotten and overgrown. "This was mine," she said. "They gave it to me quietly. I've kept it secret." "Why show me now?" She turned to him. "Because I trust you." He stepped closer. "Then let me prove myself worthy of it." Their hands met again. This time they did not part. The garden did not bloom yet, but it would. And they would too. Chapter 8. The Unspoken Bond. The castle felt different. The chill that had long haunted its halls had receded, replaced by something warmer, quieter. It wasn't just the turn of the season. It was them. Elyra and Theron passed each other now not as strangers or diplomats, but as something more, something unspoken. The court noticed. The whispers grew. One evening, as the golden light of sunset spilled across the great hall, Elyra found herself summoned to the council chamber, not by Theron, but by a cluster of nobles, their titles strung behind their names like jewels. "Your presence is concerning," one of them said stiffly. "You walk beside the king too often." "I am his wife," she replied evenly. "A wife given for peace, not for influence." She met their disdain without flinching. Perhaps peace requires presence. They bristled, and when Theron entered behind her, his gaze thunderous, the room silenced at once. "She speaks with my trust," he said. That was all, but it was enough. Afterward, he didn't return to his throne. He found her instead, walking alone in the corridor. "You shouldn't have had to answer them," he said. "I wasn't afraid," she murmured. "I was," he said, voice low. "Afraid they would see the truth. That I need you." She stopped. So did he. He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't just take it, she stepped closer. Her other hand touched his chest. "I've needed you too," she whispered. He bent his head. Their foreheads met. No kiss, not yet, but it hung between them, inevitable, inevitable. That night they lay beside each other, not out of duty, not out of obligation, but out of choice. He curled his arm around her shoulders. She tucked her head beneath his chin. And in the quiet, with her hand resting over his heart, they slept. Not alone, not anymore. Chapter 9. The Fracture. Spring arrived with soft rains and the scent of thawed earth, and still the people whispered. Some called Elyra a balm, others a storm, and still others threat. It was in the court gardens that she overheard it. "She'll bend the king to her will. He's changed, softened, dangerous for a ruler. She'll end what his father built." The words stung, though they were said behind fans and laughter. Elyra didn't show it. She never did. But that night she was quiet beside Theron, quieter than usual. He noticed. Of course he did. "Tell me," he said, fingers gently brushing hers beneath the table. She hesitated. Then finally, "They think I've weakened you." He stilled. "They think what we are is a danger to your rule." A long silence stretched between them. Then Theron pushed back his chair and stood. "Come with me." She followed without question. He led her to the upper tower, a place neither of them had gone before. It overlooked the valley, vast and green, with the river like a silver ribbon winding through it. "I was born up here," he said. "My mother gave birth to me in that room." Elyra's eyes widened slightly. "Why are you telling me this?" He turned to face her fully. "Because I never brought anyone here, not even her, and I need you to understand something." He stepped closer, his voice a breath above silence. "You haven't weakened me. You've made me remember how to feel, and maybe that's made me seem softer, but it's also made me stronger." Her eyes shone. He reached up, brushing a thumb along her cheek. "I would rather be a man who rules with love in his chest than a statue on a throne." She leaned into his touch, eyes fluttering closed. And this time, when he kissed her, it wasn't hesitant, it wasn't chaste, it was deep and aching and real. When they broke apart, her voice trembled. "I'm yours," she whispered. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her to him. "And I," he murmured against her hair, "am irrevocably yours." That night, no one saw them return to their chamber, but the door closed behind them. And it did not open again until morning. Chapter 10. A Kingdom Watched. Rumours swirled like wind through an open corridor. They whispered of a king whose eyes softened when he looked at her, of a queen who had begun to carry herself not with pride, but quiet command, of a palace blooming again after too many winters. Theron and Elyra did not address the court's murmurs. They simply walked hand in hand through the main hall, not hidden, not flaunting, just together. But peace, they learned, is always watched, and not everyone wants it. One evening, while reviewing border reports with his generals, Theron found a warning folded between dispatches, a threat against Elyra, unsigned. His blood ran cold. "Double her guard," he said sharply, quietly. But Elyra noticed. She said nothing at first, but when he joined her in the walled garden that night, she spoke gently. "There's something you're not telling me." He stiffened. "You're safe." "That wasn't what I asked." Their eyes met. He hesitated. Then, there was a letter. He expected fear. She gave him resolve. "Then let them try," she said. "I will not be shut away like a fragile thing. I'm not a flower kept in glass." He stepped closer. "You are not. You are the storm they should have feared." Her throat caught. "Then stand with me. Let them see we do not break." He kissed her then, not urgent but sure. And when they stood together before the court the next day, her hand resting on his arm, the message was clear. The king had chosen his queen, and she had chosen him. No more questions would be entertained. In the days that followed, the castle held its breath, but the whispers began to die, and love, unhidden, began to bloom in full view. Chapter 11. A Crown Shared. The spring festival dawned bright and soft, with garlands strung from tower to tower and flower petals strewn across the stones. Villagers gathered in the city square, laughter rising like birdsong, and for the first time in many years, the castle opened its gates. Theron stood in the balcony arch, his cloak caught by the wind. Below, the people waited, not just for a king's speech, but for a sign that the wounds of winter had healed. Elyra joined him quietly. Her gown was pale green, simple but regal, her hair gathered in loose braids adorned with tiny white blooms. She looked radiant, serene, loved. When he turned to her, something in his eyes softened. He offered his hand. She took it. They stepped forward together. The cheers rose up, wild and free. Theron spoke few words. He didn't need many. His presence beside her said more than any decree. They ruled as one. Later, in the quiet of the old greenhouse, now restored with sunlight and new blossoms, Theron and Elyra sat on a bench surrounded by green. He rested his head against hers. "I never thought I'd want this. A life shared." She laced their fingers. "And now? I can't imagine it without you." Her smile bloomed like the crocuses around them. He turned toward her, his voice rough with quiet emotion. "You are my heart, Elyra, not just my queen, my home." She pressed her forehead to his. "And you are the only crown I've ever wanted to wear." Their kiss came slow, deep, not the beginning of something, but the proof that it had already begun. In the garden outside, bells rang. The king who had once been reluctant, and the girl once offered in silence, stood together now, whole and adored.